Hello. My goal here is to explain everything. I have about 10 minutes, so what counts as everything is going to have to be somewhat limited. Let's start off with this. Once again, the point of the class is to bring about a change in your thinking, a change in your perception of race and ethnicity. The idea from the beginning has been this: race is not something that we are. Race is something that we do. Those two conceptions between race being something that we are, an identity, a state, and race as a set of actions, are a turn from the common sense understanding of race, the way race goes about in everyday life, where you absolutely are a race, you are an ethnicity, and all that entails, to a sociological conception of race, which is race is the outcome of social processes. Social processes is another way of saying what people actually do, what they do. This changes the relationship between cause and effect on race. So instead of seeing our ethnicity, and I'm using the words interchangeably on purpose right now, instead of seeing our ethnicity as causing us to like certain foods, feel certain ways, act in this way and not that way, instead of seeing race, ethnicity, our identities as the drivers of what we do, as though they puppet our actions, instead, we see people working to see others as a race or an ethnic group, doing work to be taken as one of these as opposed to one of those. People doing difference more so than being different. So in that sense, we're taking social actions, the actions of people, as the cause of race. And in part, this helps to explain how it is that racial and ethnic categories change over historical time and space. And historical time is just another way of saying time, and time can be 10 years or a century. Certainly as you move from country to country across the globe, who you are changes. Zuberi discusses how you're a Hispanic in the eastern half of the country and Latino in the western half of the country, and that's just within this country. If your ethnic or racial category changes based upon context, and remember this now from categorization theory, then all of a sudden we're in that third theory of categorization, and there are no essential features of you that make you a race or an ethnicity. There is nothing that all black people share. There is nothing that all Latinos share. There is no thing that all whites share. If there is no essential feature, something shared amongst that group which they have that other groups don't have, or some constellation of features even that they have that another group doesn't have, then the difference is not inherent. It's not a state. It's not a quality of people, and it doesn't do anything. It's not a phenomena in that sense that it can do, your race can do. That is not to say that it doesn't matter. Your life chances on the planet depend upon how you're grouped. Zuberi talks about legitimate classifications. I think he gets it from Paul Stone. Is that right? How you were classified in South Africa, how you are classified in the United States racially, how you're classified in Brazil or Sweden, for that matter, changes your life, affects your life chances. Race and ethnicity are extremely real in the consequences of racial stratification. Our lives are different quite often based upon those racial classifications. They aren't quite determined, but they are affected. There's a lot of other things that go into these effects, but race and ethnic identity can certainly play a part in some of the most important aspects of a person's life. Again, they don't decide it, they're not determined. And it's not your racial identity that determines it, but how you and others classify you and others. That's the turn. It's the work we do to classify that impacts people's lives, not their states. It may seem a long time to get there, but it's sort of a hard thing to grasp and to use, and the tendency is to fall back into these things. And you'll hear people saying, well, as an African American, I feel. Or you'll see a racial statistic that says, well, 75% of Latinos. And it's like, yeah, okay. And when you say Latino, when you bring that up as a group, what exactly do you mean? How is it as a scientist you go about classifying people as Latinos? Do you have something other than self-report? Which is to say, how do you get, if you're doing a survey, how do you go about collecting Latinos? Do you test them? Is there a Latino test you can use? No, you just ask them to check a box. This is what the census does. Now, hundreds of millions of dollars come out of the census. It's massively important. And a lot of those dollars are doled out. Actually, it's billions of dollars. And a lot of those dollars are doled out based upon racial classifications. How do they test for race? How do you know how many of this group you have? You ask them, and then they fill out a box. Well, that's not exactly scientific. If you ask people, are you stupid? What you're going to find out is that there's very few stupid people in the country, but we all drive around. We've been in malls. We've walked into Jamba Juice. We know that there's a lot more stupid people than would report it. So how much can you rely on self-report of these things? Now, if you go to people and you say, okay, well, what makes you white? By the way, try this. It's lots of fun. You don't want to do it too often at parties because you'll sort of lose some social standing. But if you're in a place where you don't really care what people think about you, you just go up and ask people, so what is it exactly that makes you white? What feature of you? And if it's skin color, right away, I mean, by now you can probably do it yourself. But whatever it is, just ask them. They're going to come up with something that's not actually an essential feature. Many of them don't know the history of the classification and how it's changed in this country's history massively over the last century and a half. Who gets included? Who's not included? All right, so that's the turn. Everything has been about the turn. Now, having said that that's the turn, the next thing to talk about is why it is I've had such a focus on history so far. Actually, I'll do that in the next one.